After installing the upper and lower control arms, now we're going to install the track bar here, and you can see the old one in the back and the new one in the front. And if anyone's interested in a part, this is the one that I've got. What happened in my case was my captive nut, it's just basically kind of dimpled when it goes into this piece, and it was loose. It was practically falling out. So what I did was I just hit it with some weld on there, just tack weld that back on. Another thing to note is this one came with a grease point here, and there was grease for the assembly, but it wasn't greased. You got to grease that before you install it. Notice on this one here, what they got is a weep hole there. Some guys want to like plug a lot of grease in there and overfill it, and there's no weep hole, and so then what happens is they just puff out, and you got too much grease in there. And this one here, you just apply the grease until it starts to come out the weep hole there, then you know that you're where you want to be. Lastly, I'm going to put some anti-seize on the tie rod end here, and again on my bolt over there, so that in the future it'll be a little easier to disassemble when you got to take it apart. Got the track bar installed, and that's going to be a 15 millimeter on that side, and if you want to torque it down, I went to 30 foot-pounds. That's just the number I'm using because it's equivalent to a 3/8. I don't know what the exact one is, you'd have to look it up. Over here on the tie rod end, you can see where the grease has squished itself out once we've installed it there from that weep hole. And the castle nut on top, basically you can only go hand tight on that because you don't have a whole lot of room to get anything in there. You can't get a torque wrench in or nothing like that. So hopefully you can tell there, that's a pull pin, because trying to get a Carter pin in there you just can't get it in there and then bend the other side out. So I just got that in there, and then just to be sure that it's going to stay in there, what I did was I overbent it so that it'll stay in place. What I'm talking about here is I just take this and I squeeze it together and I bend it, I overbend it past where it's touching, and then after I install it, that's going to give it a little extra squeeze, so it's just not going to be loose and come out of there. But again, just because of the location, that's why I'm using that pin instead of your regular Carter pin. Now we're going to change out these sway bar bushings up there, and that's going to be a 15 mil. And what I've done is I've just taken that bolt out there just to give us some more room so we can pull the bar down just enough to get that bushing back on and reinstalled. Here's the old one from the other side, and here's our new one here. Anybody that's interested, this is the part that I ended up getting for this job here. It's a TRW, and then there's your part number there. Simply just want to take the two bolts out, pop this out, put the bushing back in, bolt it back up, and that's pretty much it. Here's the sway bar finished installed. Got those bushings in there. What I did was I left this loose on both sides. Took that bolt out of there so I could drop the arm down, and then I could get the bushing on. Once I got the bushing on, I just put everything loose there on both sides, and then just kind of where it wanted to be, and then I tighten these up, and then I would tighten those up, and then it kind of placed itself where it wants to be, and then tighten everything up, and away you go, and now it's all good and tight. I didn't go with the torque value on those. I just rattled them up with the battery impact, and that'll be tight enough. I suppose if you want to torque them up, looking in around again, I guess say 30 foot-pounds. Got everything laid out here with all the steering arms and the complete assembly, and we got all new parts here, and we got new part numbers to show everybody if they're interested. So I don't know what arm is called what, but we just got them all laid out here, and we'll start off with this one here. So we've got that one, and there's the part number for that. Then we're gonna have our coupler here. There's our coupler. There's the part for that one. Then we have on the end, we have our tie rod. There's the tie rod in there, and that's the part for that. We go up to this tie rod here. It's the exact same part number. You'll see that. Here's the tie rod, and there's the part number. Again, the coupler's the same part again. So there's the coupler. There's that part number. And then finally, we have the big long rod here, and that's the part number for that. With it all laid out on the floor here, we purposely left this old piece all together because we want to match the length of everything. So we're going to measure from here to there, and then we're going to match it, and then we're going to do the same thing for the other one. We're going to measure from there to there and then match that. Lastly, we'll put in the stabilizer. Another thing to note is that the removable replaceable tie rod ends are greasable. When we take a look at the long rod there's no grease nipple on that one, and there's no grease nipple on that one, which could bring us back to the same situation as we had before, where I was talking about how these long rods don't get replaced because they might be harder to come by, and it's easier and cheaper to simply replace the shorter ones, the shorter tie rod ends. So I'm gonna see about putting some grease nipples in there. Maybe they'll last a little longer. We want to install a grease zerk in the end of the ball joint here. It doesn't have one. We want to put one in there so we can grease this. It'll last longer that way. We take the vernier here, and then what we do is we measure the diameter of this, and then we divide that in half. On there we got 1.160, and then we're going to divide that by half, and then we end up with 0.58. So we're going to set up our vernier to 0.58 here. Once I've set it to 0.58 and locked it, I'm going to try and grab an edge there, and then I'm just going to scribe a line, and I'm going to go around and I'll scribe several lines. So I did one from this side, this side, this side, and this side. Grab the hammer and center punch, make our mark, and then I made a pilot hole in there. I just use that small drill bit for the pilot hole. It's going to help, so when we actually use the real drill bit, it's going to keep it centered. Hopefully everything will work a little bit better. It's always good to have a pilot hole rather than to try and drill a larger hole just from scratch kind of thing. Because we want to know what we need to drill that hole and tap those threads to. So we take a look here. We've got a 1/4 inch. Right there is going to tell us it's a 1/4 inch, and that's 28 threads per inch. So this is going to be fine thread. Over here we're going to grab our fine thread tap, and then that's going to tell us that we want a 3/16 drill bit to drill, and then use the tap on there. And just to be sure, what I did was I've got the other tie rod end, and I make sure that our drill bit fits inside there. And in fact, you could go one size bigger, and one size bigger would be 13/64. But we're going to stick with our 3/16 because we want some good tight threads. And then we'll drill the hole, tap it, and hopefully we won't get too much debris that goes inside the tie rod end there. Maybe you can see the threads in there after drilling and tapping the hole. Now we can put our grease zerk in there, and then we can be confident that we can grease this tie rod end, and it'll last longer, so it won't fail as fast. And once you thread that grease zerk in there, you're just going to use a 5/16 wrench to tighten that up. Nice and gentle. There's not a lot of threads there. That's why it's fine thread. You just snug it up nice, and then you're good to go. And then we can grease this after we've got everything installed. We've roughly assembled these arms here. I used the impact to snug that up, and then I got the carter pin in there, so that's good. And then now what we'll do is this side goes to the passenger side, that guy goes to the driver's side, and then we're going to have to install our stabilizer. And this one should go to the drag link for the power steering gearbox. We've just installed our steering bars in here, got everything loose. That's loose on this side here, and then on the other side we got those other two loose as well. Here we go, here's the driver's side. Again, we just got that loose. And again, off our drag link there, again, loose. Those three spots, we just won't put them in loose. We're gonna put in our stabilizer, and then once we've loosely installed everything, then we're gonna tighten everything down. Here's that steering stabilizer here. And there's a part number for anyone interested. And in my case, I'm just gonna go with a 1/2 inch bolt on this side here. That's gonna bolt to the frame. And as it comes down where the bellows boot is, that's gonna be the rod that will come in and out of the body of the shock there. This piece here is gonna go into that steering bar. And that's why it's tapered there, because this is the same as a tie rod end. And then a nut on the end. But in my case, it came with that nut for this side, And it came with this nut and this washer for this side. So I didn't like this washer because it's too loose. That hole's too big for this diameter, so I made my own here, and also too I made my own nut. And this is going to be a 7/16. That's 7/16 fine thread. I grabbed a piece of 3/4 inch hex octagon material here, drilled and tapped for the 7/16, and then now both sides is going to be a 3/4, because this is 1/2 inch fine, so that's a 3/4 nut there, and this is also going to be a 3/4 nut here. I also didn't like that nut that they supplied there, so I found a castle nut, and I also drilled the holes in this thing so we could put some carter pins in there. Now I'm satisfied with that. This piece here is going to get installed into there, and then the tie rod end goes into the bar, and this end over here is just going to go into the body. We finished installed everything up here, and if you want to torque those down, I'd go in around 30 foot-pounds, should get you where you need to be. Torque that down, put in your carter pin there, and then everything's good to go. So this is the driver's side. Up here we have our drag link to our bar that's going to, that's where our steering stabilizer is, and that's where I'd put that castle nut, drilled that hole in there. Again, 30 pounds for everything here. They're all the same size. And then so we have that one to the stabilizer, to the frame. We have that one there that connects the two bars. And here over on the passenger side is the last one. So we have tightened everything down, installed our carter pins, and greased all the equipment. Not all vehicles have it, but in my case I have the skid plate to put on now, and that should finish everything up in the front there. So with all our new hardware in here, I think what happens is the reason that they've got this configuration with these bars is the articulation of the front end. If one side's higher than the other, that's why we kind of got like these scissor bar kind of things. I think that helps with that articulation. This is what I say is causing all your problems with your death wobble, because it's going to be these bars that are holding your front wheels parallel. The problem becomes speed. When you're driving on the highway or you're driving at a higher speed and the wheels lift off the ground, you've got the velocity of the wheels spinning, and then these are the rods that are holding everything together. If they're wore out, they're not going to be holding those wheels parallel, and you've got a lot of rotational forces happening there. Hopefully now that we've changed everything here, we shouldn't have no more troubles with the death wobble in the front end of this Jeep.